I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who crossed a line that can't be uncrossed, but one night my stepson Ethan offered a kind of help that changed everything. You know, life doesn't warn you when you're about to make a decision that splits your story in two, before and after. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey Emma, be careful. This is the moment everything changes." No, it creeps in quietly, slowly, like water dripping through a crack you didn't even know was there, and by the time you realize what you've done, you're already drowning in it. My house in Willow Creek was quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was cold, empty, the kind of quiet where your own heartbeat becomes the loudest sound in the room. My husband James, he was there, technically, physically, but emotionally checked out. He stopped noticing things years ago, stopped asking how I was doing, stopped seeing me. Emma, became background noise in my own life. I'd cook dinner, fold laundry, clean up after everyone, and still lie awake at night wondering if I mattered at all, wondering if this was just how marriage goes once the honeymoon fades. And maybe that's why I didn't even notice when things started shifting, when eyes that were once just familiar became something more, when simple gestures started feeling like lifelines. I wasn't looking for it, I wasn't planning it, but my heart, it was tired. Tired of being invisible, tired of pretending like everything was fine, tired of walking past a man who didn't even flinch when I cried in the kitchen with my back turned. So when my stepson Ethan, when he really saw me, looked at me with concern, not judgment, it did something to me. I wasn't ready for it, cracked something open, something I'd buried a long time ago. One night, just one moment of unexpected kindness changed the way I saw him and the way I saw myself. I wish I could say I stopped it, I wish I could tell you I pulled back before it all went too far, but I didn't, and now I live with a memory I can't erase and a silence in our Willow Creek house that says more than words ever could. What happened between us, it wasn't loud, it wasn't reckless, it was slow, subtle, and that's what makes it so haunting. But I'll tell you everything, not because I'm proud, but because maybe someone out there feels the same way I did, maybe someone else is standing on that edge, not even realizing it. So if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever ached to be seen, heard, or held just once, then this story, it might be closer to your heart than you'd like to admit. Please, if you're still listening, take a second to hit that like button, subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga, and if any part of this feels familiar, if you've been in a complicated situation that left you questioning everything, share it in the comments. I read them, I really do, and your story might just help someone else feel a little less alone. Now let me tell you how it all began, because what started as help turned into something I never expected. Emma, was 38, married for 12 years, and somehow lonelier than I'd ever been in my life. Our house in Willow Creek was beautiful on the outside, well-kept lawn, warm lighting, fresh paint, but inside it was cold, not physically but emotionally. There was this quiet tension in the air, the kind you can't see but you feel in your chest the second you walk through the door, the kind of silence that doesn't soothe but suffocates. My husband James, he wasn't cruel, he didn't yell, he didn't drink, he didn't cheat, he just wasn't there, at least not in the ways that mattered to me. He'd come home from work, pour himself a drink, and stare at his phone or the TV for hours. We stopped talking about anything that wasn't purely functional: bills, groceries, appointments. We'd eat dinner side by side, but it felt like we were sitting across oceans. It didn't used to be that way. There was a time when James made me laugh until I cried, when he touched my lower back in the kitchen just because, when we had inside jokes and little glances that meant everything. But over the years, that faded, and somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to get it back. I convinced myself that this was just what marriage becomes. But I missed being looked at like I mattered, I missed being seen. I started noticing how I would dress up less and less. What was the point? James didn't notice when I wore a new dress, didn't comment when I put on makeup. I dyed my hair darker one weekend, something bold, something different. James didn't say a word, didn't even look twice. But a few days later, my stepson Ethan did. He'd only just moved back in, he was 21, had some trouble adjusting to college life, and we offered to let him stay with us in Willow Creek for a while. Ethan was polite, reserved, always respectful, quiet but observant, the kind of person who didn't say much, but when he did, you knew he meant it. We hadn't spent much time together before he moved in. His mother, James's ex, had primary custody for most of his childhood, and our visits were infrequent. But now here Ethan was, under our roof, walking into the same kitchen I stood in every morning making coffee, asking how I slept. And when he saw me that morning after I dyed my hair, he paused for a second and said, "Did you change something, Emma? It looks really nice." I blinked, not because the compliment was over the top or inappropriate, it wasn't, but because it had been so long since anyone had noticed anything about me. I smiled and thanked him, and Ethan just nodded and went about his business. No weird energy, no tension, just a simple, honest observation. But it lingered with me. Ethan was the only one who noticed when I cut my hair, the only one who asked if I was okay when I had a headache, the only one who said thank you when I cooked. I wasn't used to that anymore, and it wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it, the way he looked at me when I spoke, like I actually mattered, like he was listening. I couldn't remember the last time someone looked at me like that, like what I said wasn't just background noise. James and I shared a bed, but we slept like strangers. No kisses goodnight, no warmth, just the sound of him snoring beside me while I stared at the ceiling, wondering how much more of this kind of life I could take, wondering if this numbness was normal, if this was just how things go. And yet here was this young man, Ethan, living in the same Willow Creek house, unintentionally reminding me that I still existed. I tried to ignore it, I really did, tried to brush off the way I'd catch myself glancing at him during breakfast, the way I felt my heart stir just a little when he asked how my day was. I told myself I was just grateful for the kindness, that it was harmless. But that quiet emptiness in my marriage, the one that had become a part of the furniture, was suddenly unbearable again, because now I knew what it felt like to be seen, to be spoken to be acknowledged. And once you taste that kind of warmth after years of cold, it's hard to pretend you don't want more. I didn't know it yet, but the seed had already been planted, and it was only a matter of time before it grew into something I wouldn't know how to control. That night I, Emma, couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, the Willow Creek house completely still except for the soft hum of the fridge down the hall and the occasional creak of the wood settling. My husband James was asleep beside me, turned away, his back rising and falling in that slow, indifferent rhythm I'd grown so used to, no hand reaching out to check on me, no whispered, "Are you okay, Emma?" Juste the same cold silence. But in my mind, I kept seeing Ethan, the way he looked at me on the couch, the gentleness in his voice, the warmth in his eyes. I replayed that moment over and over. Maybe someone should take care of you, Emma. I felt it again, like a slow ache blooming in my chest, a warmth I hadn't felt in so long it startled me. I tried to push the thought away, to remind myself he was my stepson, Ethan. But even that word, stepson, felt strange now, like it didn't quite fit who he was to me in that moment. I wasn't fantasizing, I wasn't planning anything, I couldn't ignore the way Ethan made me feel. And that's when the guilt started creeping in. Was I really that starved for affection? Was my heart really so empty that a single moment of kindness from Ethan could unravel me like this? I turned onto my side, facing away from James, eyes wide open in the dark. I tried to remember the last time James touched me just to be close, the last time he asked how I was doing without expecting a to-do list in return, the last time we laughed together. It had been years, and that laughter, the kind that used to bubble up between us over nothing at all, it had faded so quietly I didn't even notice it was gone until Ethan made me smile again. It felt like there were two versions of me now, the Emma who used to be full of life, playful, silly, sensual, and the Emma lying in that bed frozen, hollowed out by routine and neglect. I used to love the way James would sneak up behind me at the sink and kiss my neck. I used to feel beautiful just because he told me I was, even with no makeup and messy hair. We used tous le dance in the Willow Creek kitchen at midnight for no reason at all. But now, I couldn't remember the last time James even looked at me like I was something worth holding on to. So I started asking myself things I never thought I would. Is it really so wrong to want to feel something again? Is it really so terrible to want to be seen, heard, noticed? I kept telling myself it wasn't like anything had happened, it was just a moment, just a feeling. I didn't act on it, I didn't cross any lines, and Ethan was an adult, grown, mature, old enough to know boundaries, old enough to speak for himself. I wasn't trying to seduce Ethan, I wasn't looking for anything, I was just enjoying the attention. That's what I told myself, I was just enjoying the attention. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple, because it wasn't just about being noticed, it was about being understood. And for the first time in so long, I felt like someone, Ethan, was actually seeing me again, not as a wife, not as a stepmom, just as Emma, a woman. I started watching myself around Ethan, how I moved, how I talked. I hated that I was aware of it, but I couldn't help it, the way my voice softened, the way I tucked my hair behind my ear when Ethan walked into the room. I noticed it, and I hated that I noticed it, but I didn't stop. Something inside me, something quiet, buried and long forgotten, was waking up, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. The real conflict wasn't about Ethan, it was about me, what I needed, what I had silenced for years, what I wasn't getting at home. And whether I liked it or not, I had already opened the door, even if I hadn't walked through it yet. After that night on the couch, something shifted between Ethan and me, subtle, quiet, but unmistakable. Neither of us mentioned it, we didn't talk about the way Ethan helped me or the way he looked at me, but from that moment on, things just felt different. We started spending more time together, naturally at first. I'd cook dinner, and Ethan would sit at the counter, telling me about his classes, his frustrations, how hard it was to adjust after leaving campus. Ethan told me he felt like he didn't belong anywhere, like he was floating between two versions of his life, one that didn't work out and another he hadn't figured out yet. I understood the feeling more than I wanted to admit, so I listened. And when I shared little pieces of my own restlessness, Ethan listened too, really listened. And it didn't feel forced or awkward, it felt easy. Most nights, James came home late, or not at all. Business trips started becoming more frequent. Dinners turned into silent solo meals for me, until I started making enough for two, and Ethan started showing up without being asked. It became our quiet little routine. I'd make something homemade, Ethan would help set the table, we'd talk, and sometimes we'd just sit there in silence, but not the uncomfortable kind, the comfortable kind, the kind where you don't have to fill the space with words because presence is enough. And then came the night that took things further. James had left for a 3-day business trip. I didn't ask where this time, I stopped asking long ago. I was just glad I didn't have to feel the coldness of his silence over dinner. That night, I made a simple pasta dish. Ethan offered to pick the movie, something light, something funny. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, like we always did. There was space between us, but it didn't feel like distance. The movie played, and somewhere halfway through, we both reached for the popcorn bowl at the same time. My hand brushed Ethan's, not hard, not even intentionally, but we didn't pull away right away either. I felt a jolt, a little spark that moved up my arm like a whisper. Our eyes met briefly, and then we both looked away and laughed, awkwardly, gently, but that laugh, it lingered. The movie kept playing, but I barely heard the rest of it. We didn't say anything after that moment, but we stayed right where we were, closer now, my legs tucked under me, my body turned slightly in Ethan's direction, his gaze drifting toward me every now and then. And when it ended, Ethan stood up, stretched, thanked me for dinner, and went to his room. I sat there long after the credits rolled, staring at the screen, heart beating faster than it should have been. That night, I had a dream. I don't remember how it started, but I remember the way it felt. Ethan's hands, warm and slow, trailing down my spine, his lips brushing the side of my neck, barely touching, like he wasn't sure if he should, and me, Emma, not stopping him, wanting more, needing more. In the dream, there was no guilt, no second-guessing, just heat, connection, safety. I woke up suddenly, my skin warm, my breath shallow, and for a second I was confused, disoriented, my body still tangled in the feelings of that dream, my mind racing with shame and longing. I sat up, pressing my hand to my chest like that might calm it down. What was happening to me? How had something so small, just kindness, just presence from Ethan, turned into this? I stood up, pulled on my robe, and walked quietly to the kitchen, needing water, needing distraction. And there Ethan was, already in the kitchen, making breakfast, just like in the dream. That storm rolled in slow and heavy, The sky had been grumbling all evening, that low, distant kind of thunder that feels more like a warning than a sound. I could see flashes of lightning through the Willow Creek windows, lighting up the living room in short bursts. The air felt thick, like something was coming, though I couldn't tell if it was outside or inside me. James was gone again, another overnight trip, another excuse I didn't question. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket, pretending to read, but really I was listening, waiting, hoping maybe Ethan would walk out of his room like he had the night of the movie, maybe we'd talk, or maybe we wouldn't have to, maybe the silence would be enough again. And then everything went dark. A loud pop sounded somewhere in the distance, and suddenly the Willow Creek house was pitch black, the kind of darkness that pulls everything in with it. I sat frozen for a second, my heart knocking against my ribs. Then I heard footsteps down the hall, calm, steady.
Hey, Emma, Ethan called softly, you okay?
I nodded before realizing he probably couldn't see me.
Yeah, I think the power's out.
Ethan walked into the room, holding a flashlight. Its beam hit my face, and I flinched, shielding my eyes. He chuckled, sorry. He disappeared again and came back a moment later with a couple of candles. Ethan lit them one by one, placing them around the room.
The soft, flickering glow made everything look different. Softer, warmer, like we weren't even in the same Willow Creek house anymore.
Ethan sat down beside me, not at the far end like usual, closer this time, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. We were both quiet for a moment, listening to the rain tapping against the windows, the wind pushing against the house like it was trying to find a way in. Then Ethan said quietly, I used to hate storms when I was a kid. I turned to him. Why? Ethan looked at the candle flame. Not sure, just because everything felt out of control, like anything could go wrong at any second, and there's nothing you can do about it. I nodded.
I get that.
Ethan glanced at me, then really looked at me. You ever feel like that, Emma, even when there's no storm?
The word caught in my throat.
I looked away, but not fast enough to hide the answer in my eyes.
Yeah, I whispered, all the time. We sat there, the storm rumbling loud now, shadow dancing across the walls.
I could feel it building, not just the weather, but something else, something rising between Ethan and me, something that had been simmering quietly for weeks, waiting for the right moment to surface. Ethan shifted slightly, turning toward me. You don't talk about yourself much, Emma.
He gave a weak smile.
Not much to say. I don't believe that. I stared at the candle in front of us. I used to feel seen, wanted, like I mattered. Ethan didn't interrupt, he let me speak. Now I just feel like a fixture in someone else's life, like I'm here, but no one notices, not really. Silence stretched again, but this time it was different. Ethan reached out, slowly, cautiously, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. It was gentle, almost hesitant, but it sent a chill down my spine. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. His fingers lingered near my cheek, my heart was pounding, but I felt frozen, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment, from everything it meant. Ethan looked at me, voice barely above a whisper. You don't deserve to feel this alone, Emma. And before I could speak, before I could remind myself of all the reasons this couldn't happen, I leaned in, not much, just a little, just enough, and Ethan met me there. The kiss was soft, slow, not rushed, not wild, just full of things neither of us had said aloud. It was comfort, it was ache, it was the quiet desperation of two people who had spent far too long pretending they were fine.
He pulled back first.
I didn't say anything, neither did Ethan. We just sat there, breathing, staring, not knowing what came next. And just like that, the world stopped. What had I done? The morning after, the silence between Ethan and me said more than any words ever could. Emma woke early, my body stiff from the position I'd fallen asleep in on the couch, still wrapped in that same blanket, the faint scent of candles lingering in the air. The power was back, the hum of the fridge had returned, the world outside Willow Creek was calm again, like the storm had never happened. But inside, Everything was different. I heard Ethan in the kitchen, the familiar clink of a spoon in a mug, the soft shuffle of his feet on the tile, but there were no words this time, no good morning, Emma, no eye contact when I walked in. Ethan kept his back to me, pouring coffee, like it was any other day, like nothing had happened, like his lips hadn't just been on mine hours ago. And I did the same. I walked past Ethan, picked up a banana I didn't want, peeled it just to have something to do with my hands. My heart was thumping in my chest, but my face stayed still. I'd learned how to wear masks a long time ago. We didn't speak, we didn't need to, we were both pretending, trying to rewind something that couldn't be undone. Later that afternoon, James came home. His suitcase hit the floor with a dull thud. He kissed the top of my head in passing, like someone greeting a coworker, not a wife. James asked if there was anything to eat, then disappeared into the kitchen without waiting for an answer. He didn't notice anything was off. He never did. But I did. Everything felt off. Ethan kept to himself more than usual. He stayed in his room most of the day, and when he came out, it was only to leave. Ethan said he needed some air, that he was meeting a friend. He barely looked at me when he walked out the door. And Emma, I felt sick. Not just guilty sick, that deep churning kind of sickness that starts in your stomach and spreads to every inch of your body. I couldn't stop replaying the moment, the softness of it, the way I'd leaned in first, the way Ethan had met me halfway, the look in his eyes afterward, confused, unsure, almost like he didn't trust what had just happened. I wanted to talk to Ethan, to ask if he was okay, to explain that I wasn't thinking straight, that it was the storm, the darkness, the years of loneliness pressing in all at once. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I folded laundry, wiped down counters that didn't need cleaning, cooked meals no one thanked me for, and all the while, I kept hearing that moment like a broken record in the back of my mind. At dinner that evening, we sat like we always did, James across from me, scrolling on his phone between bites, Ethan quiet, pushing food around his plate, me, Emma, pretending I wasn't unraveling 1 second at a time. Then, halfway through chewing a bite of chicken, James said, I think Ethan's been distant lately, maybe something's bothering him. I almost dropped my fork. I looked up, forcing my voice to stay steady. Ethan's got a lot on his plate right now, probably just stressed. Ethan didn't speak, he didn't even flinch. He just stood up a few minutes later, mumbled something about going out again, and left. I watched Ethan walk down the hallway, heard the front door click shut behind him, and I just sat there, holding a glass of water I hadn't sipped from, staring into it like it held the answers I didn't know how to find. I couldn't tell if Ethan regretted it, if he hated me for letting it happen, or if he was just as lost in the aftermath as I was. All I knew was everything had changed, and there was no going back. Some nights are quieter than others, not just in sound, but in presence, in weight. That night, it was quiet in the way that makes you feel like the whole world has turned its back on you, the kind of quiet that doesn't offer peace, only space to think, to spiral. Emma, sat alone in the Willow Creek living room, lights dimmed, curled into the corner of the couch like I was trying to disappear into it. James had gone to bed hours ago. He didn't ask where I was, didn't come looking, didn't even glance my way as he passed down the hall. And honestly, I was glad. I didn't know what I would have said if he had. Because sitting there in that silence, I wasn't sure who I was anymore.
Aimé à terrible personne, or juste sommeon d'espérate for love?
That question played over and over in my head like a cruel lullaby. I wanted to believe it was just the loneliness, the years of being overlooked, of feeling like a ghost in my own Willow Creek marriage. But is that enough of a reason? Is that a justification, or is it just an excuse I'm clinging to, hoping it'll make the guilt go down easier? I thought about James, about how, over time, the man I married had become someone I didn't recognize, or maybe Emma had changed, and he just never noticed. Maybe that was the worst part, not the absence of affection, but the absence of awareness. James didn't see how tired I was, how empty I'd become. He didn't notice the nights I cried silently in the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror like a stranger. He didn't hear the silent questions I carried to bed each night. Do I matter? Would James even notice if I disappeared? He didn't see any of it, but Ethan did. I kept wondering, what if it had gone further?
What if I hadn't pu let away?
Would I have let it happen? Would I have wanted it? The truth I didn't want to admit, even to myself, was yes. A part of me did want it, not just the physical part, not the kiss itself, but the feeling behind it, the connection, the warmth, the weight of being seen, held, desired, even for just a second. And that scared me more than anything, because I didn't know what that said about me, about the woman I'd become, about the marriage I was still technically inside of, though in reality, I'd been drifting outside its walls for years. I considered telling James, just blurting it out one night at dinner, confessing like some wayward soul in search of punishment. But what would I even say? I kissed your son Ethan in the dark during a storm because I was starving for affection. How do you even begin to unravel that?
I pictured the fallout, the shock, the silence, the pain.
But then again, maybe it wouldn't matter. Maybe James would just blink and go back to his phone. Maybe he wouldn't even be surprised. That hurt more than the guilt. Eventually, Ethan moved out, quietly, without drama, without questions. Ethan said it was time, that he'd found a place closer to campus. I didn't ask why, I didn't beg him to stay. We haven't spoken since. I don't know if Ethan hates me, I don't know if he remembers it the same way I do, I don't know if he's buried it the way I've tried to. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls outside like it did during that storm in Willow Creek, I remember. I remember the flicker of candlelight on Ethan's face, the way his voice shook when he said, "You don't deserve to feel so alone, Emma." The warmth of Ethan's hand brushing my cheek, and I wonder, when our worlds collided for that one impossible moment, did something in me break, or did something finally wake up?
You'll never know.
All I know is I never really came back from it. I know many of you might judge me, and maybe you should. Maybe you're sitting there right now, shaking your head, thinking, how could Emma, how could a woman betray her marriage, her family, herself like that? But before you let that judgment settle in your chest, I want you to really ask yourself something. Have you ever lived in silence for so long that even your own thoughts start to sound like background noise? Have you ever craved a simple touch so badly it felt like oxygen? Have you ever looked at someone, anyone, and felt for the first time in years, like you weren't invisible? Because that's what it was. It wasn't about lust, it wasn't some scandalous fantasy. It was about loneliness, a deep, aching kind of loneliness that doesn't just live in your chest, it becomes you. I, Emma, didn't set out to hurt anyone. I didn't plan for a moment with Ethan to change everything, but it did. And I've had to live with that. So now I ask you, was it emotional cheating? Was the kiss worse than the years of neglect that came before it?
Can you forgive Someone ou juste wanted, for once, to feel alive again?
Have you ever been tempted by kindness when love was missing? I don't expect everyone to understand, but maybe, just maybe, someone out there knows what I'm talking about. Maybe you've been there, or maybe you're there right now, trapped in the silence, holding on by threads. And if you are, I hope you find your voice before it's too late, before you make a choice you can't take back, before the longing outweighs the logic. Because once that line is crossed, no matter how gently, no matter how quietly, things are never the same. If you connected with this story, if you've ever lived in a situation you couldn't explain to anyone, not even yourself, share it below. I'm not here to judge, I'm here to listen. And if you want more raw, real and complicated stories like this one, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a moment.